The sky over New Colorado shimmered with hues borrowed from another planet. Pink clouds drifted lazily over mountains that glowed with bioluminescent moss, a gift left behind after the Treaty of Terran Integration allowed peaceful coexistence with the Orovari, an alien race of slender, multi-limbed beings with voices that sang in frequencies most humans couldn't even hear. In this peculiar part of Earth, between rocky ridges and crystalline fields, an auction was held once a month. It was quiet, discreet, and mostly off the record. Not every part of the alliance was noble, and not every being was treated equally. Orek didn't mean to be there. He'd wandered too far while salvaging electronic scraps for his solar farm. He wasn't a soldier, nor a politician. Just a man who lived outside the cities, away from the noise. But that day, the odd hum of gathered ships caught his attention. He followed it. What he saw chilled him. A cluster of humans and a few rogue Orovari surrounded a makeshift platform. On it stood a girl, thin, pale, shaking. Unlike others of her kind, her limbs were asymmetrical, her posture crooked, her right eye flickering in broken pulses of light. The Orovari around her hissed and laughed. Their translator chips distorted the meaning, but not the mockery. Defective. One of them rasped through a grin. Unsellable. Give her away to the human. Let's see what he does. Maybe he'll use her as decor. They pointed at Orek. He blinked. Me? Yes. One of the smugglers said. Consider her a gift. Trash for your collection. She didn't speak. Her gaze was lowered, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She trembled like a leaf about to snap. Orek stared. Every instinct said walk away. This wasn't his fight. He wasn't a hero. But then she looked up. Just one glance, her remaining eye bright with terror and something else, something so human, changed everything. He stepped forward. I'll take her. The smugglers roared with laughter. One tossed a cracked translator at him. Good luck fixing her. Another sneered. She can't even speak properly. Useless. He ignored them and crouched beside her. Slowly, without touching, he extended a hand. I'm not here to hurt you, he said gently. Name's Orek. You want to come with me? No answer. Her eye flickered again. He didn't press. Instead, he stood, turned his back, and waited. Seconds passed. Then a faint rustling sound, feet shuffling, then silence. When he looked back, she was behind him, still trembling, but following. The trek back to Orek's homestead was quiet. The sky darkened with twin moons rising, one silver, one pale red. They passed through glowing thistle fields and rust-colored brush. The girl walked 3 paces behind, never speaking, never stopping. When they reached his small cottage, built into a hill and surrounded by solar vines, Orek paused at the gate. I've got an extra cot, he said, motioning inside. You're free to stay. No one's going to mock you here. She didn't respond. But when he opened the door and stepped aside, she hesitated only a moment before entering. The home was simple, warm-toned stone walls, hanging lanterns powered by stored light, and shelves cluttered with salvaged parts. He brought out a blanket and set it on the cot across the room from his own. You can sleep here. I won't come near you unless you say so. Okay? Still no answer. She sat on the edge of the cot, arms tight around herself. Orek exhaled softly. We'll figure things out in the morning. He turned off the lanterns, leaving only moonlight spilling through the skylight. Long after he'd closed his eyes, he heard her whisper something, soft, broken. Narai. His breath caught. That was her name. The next day began with the gentle hum of morning bugs and the soft wind brushing over solar petals. Orek prepared tea and offered her a cup. Narai took it with trembling hands. You remember what they called you? He asked, cautious. She nodded faintly. They were wrong, he said. She looked away. He spent the day fixing old panels, trying not to watch her too closely. But she didn't wander. She sat on a flat rock outside the house, watching a fluttering bird creature Orek called a flinchin. It landed near her, unafraid. Later that evening, he noticed her toying with the cracked translator. Want help fixing it? He asked. She flinched. I won't touch it if you don't want. Just offering. She glanced at him, then at the tool belt hanging from his hip. After a long pause, she held the device out, 2 hands, palms up. It was the first time she willingly interacted with him. Oryx smiled gently. All right then. They worked side by side. He let her hold tools, watching how her oddly shaped hands moved, different from others of her kind, yet graceful in their own way. When he sparked the device to life, her eyes widened. Testing, she said through it. The voice came out warbled, digitized. Not perfect, but a start, he said. She nodded once, then whispered, Thank you. Over the next week, something shifted. Narai started sitting closer. She began helping him sort wires, mimicking his actions. She hummed strange melodies under her breath. Her limbs still jerked at times, and she startled easily, but Oryx never pushed her. One night, as stars blanketed the sky, she sat beside him on the porch. I was made wrong, she said through the translator. From birth. They hid me for years, then gave me away. Oryx didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, truly looked, at the faint green patterns that glowed on her skin, at the way her remaining eye reflected starlight. You weren't made wrong, he said. You were made different. That's not the same. She studied his face, as if trying to believe him. Do you mean that? She asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. Narai tilted her head slightly. Then, why are you kind? He blinked. Because someone has to be. A silence passed between them, quiet but full. She looked away, but her hand brushed his, barely a touch, like a breeze. It was the first time she initiated contact. The following days melted into one another like a soft dream neither of them dared to disturb. The awkwardness began to fade. Narai moved with more confidence, and Oryx found himself watching her more often than he realized. She was still quiet, still flinched at sharp sounds or unfamiliar tools, but she no longer looked like she expected to be struck. That small shift was everything. One morning, while tending to the vines near the creek, he noticed her crouched beside a blooming glowcap plant, her fingers tracing the translucent petals. Her head turned slightly when he approached, but she didn't move away. You like those? He asked, his voice tentative as if unsure how to approach her when she seemed lost in thought. They speak, she said in a near whisper. Not like us, but they do. He crouched beside her, his curiosity piqued. What do they say? She pressed her palm to one. They speak of warmth, of safety, like your home. Oryx swallowed, struck by how poetic her thoughts were. She rarely said much, but when she did, it stuck. She spoke in a way that made everything feel deeper, more alive. It was as if each word she shared was a window to an unspoken world. You've got a beautiful way of thinking, he said, his voice softer than he intended. The words felt strange coming from him, but they were true. Narai's cheeks darkened with a faint violet flush. Her eye flicked upward to meet his, and for a moment, the world seemed to fall away. I don't know how to talk like you. Not yet. He smiled. Then I'll learn to talk like you. Her lips curved upward slightly at the edges. It was the first time she'd smiled fully since their meeting, and it was radiant, so unguarded, so genuine. Oryx's heart skipped a beat. That night, she brought out a shard of crystal, etched with glyphs and glimmering with soft pulses of light. She placed it gently on the table between them, the colors shifting across the surface, a faint hum emanating from it. This teaches Orivari tongue, she explained, her voice quiet yet firm with purpose. Voice and light. He leaned in, curious. Is it safe to touch? Narai nodded. I show you. She pressed her fingers to it first, and Oryx watched, mesmerized, as the crystal responded to her touch. A soft harmony filled the room, like wind and ocean and flute all at once. The sound was beautiful and otherworldly, pulling him in, resonating with something deep inside him. It was unlike anything he had ever heard, like the language of the stars themselves. Then, Narai spoke aloud, repeating the sound, melodic, alien, hypnotic. The words felt like something alive, alive with the power of an entire world that spoke through her. Orek cleared his throat. Your turn, she said softly. He chuckled, his nerves creeping up. No promises I'll be any good. He hesitated, his voice unsure as he tried to repeat the sound. His attempt came out clumsy and rough, cracking mid-sentence. Narai's soft laugh filled the room, a burst of starlight in sound. Bad? She teased lightly, her eye gleaming with amusement. Thanks, he replied dryly. Nice to know my vocal cords offend entire species. Her laughter softened, but her gaze remained warm. She reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his wrist. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him, and for a moment, the world felt distant, leaving only the two of them in the quiet room. No, try again. I help, she said, her touch tender but insistent. He nodded, drawing in a breath before trying again. It was better this time, closer to the melody of her voice. He tried several more times, each attempt coming with its own mishaps. But with each failure, Narai's smile only grew wider. She encouraged him with soft words in her language, guiding him patiently. And finally, with one last, desperate effort, he got it right. His tone wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The word came close enough for her to beam. You learn, she whispered. Her hand remained on his wrist, warm and fragile, grounding him to the moment. He felt a strange sense of pride swelling within him. He had learned something important, something that brought him closer to her world. It felt like more than just learning a language. It felt like breaking a barrier. He hadn't just spoken her words, he had spoken her heart. Each evening after that, they practiced together. She taught him simple phrases, Sci-Fi Valen, meaning, I understand you, and Tavianer, you are enough. Each word felt like more than just vocabulary. It was emotion, it was connection, embedded in every sound. The language of Narai's people was far from what Orek had known, but it resonated with something ancient within him, something primal and beautiful. Orek began to dream in those tones. They would mix into his thoughts, becoming as natural as his own words. He found himself murmuring them during the day, just to hear the melody of them, to feel the strange, unfamiliar comfort that came with them. One night, the air cool and the stars fierce above them, they sat beside the stream. Fireflies danced in the dark, their soft light flickering above the surface of the water, casting an ethereal glow across Narai's face. She dipped her toes into the water, her hair shimmering faintly under the moonlight. She turned to him, her gaze searching. You listen when I speak. Of course, he said, his voice soft and sure. Others laughed, or ignored. You never do. Orek's chest tightened. You deserve to be heard. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a space filled with understanding, with trust. Then, softly, Narai asked, Why? He looked at her carefully, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. Because I see you, Narai, not just what they called you, not the defect. You're a person. You matter. Her lips parted, trembling slightly, and Orek noticed how the faintest tear glimmered in her eye. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was something more tender. I didn't know I could. He reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers grazing her skin lightly. She didn't pull away. You do, he said gently. You've always mattered. They just didn't see it. Her eyes shimmered with emotion, the tears gathering in the corners of her eye. She blinked slowly, and for a moment, Orek thought she might say something else. But instead, she only whispered, I don't know what this feeling is. Orek's heart skipped, an unfamiliar tightness growing in his chest. It's called love, he said, his voice hushed. She blinked, her face softening. Then I think I am falling. Orek's gaze held hers, steady and sure. Me too. And with that, Narai leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. It was a small, hesitant gesture, but it was enough. In that quiet moment, with the river whispering and the glow caps lighting the night, they both knew that they were no longer alone in the world. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more unknowns, but for now they had each other. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Aurek and Narai deepened with every passing moment. What had begun as a tentative understanding, born out of the desire to communicate, had blossomed into something far more profound. They no longer spent every moment speaking, yet when they did, the words felt like a song, their meanings carrying far more than their literal translations. Aurek learned Narai's habits, how she preferred the quiet hum of the night, the way she'd hum softly to herself as she worked, creating patterns of sound that felt as though they belonged to the stars. He grew accustomed to her silences too, how she would sometimes simply stare at the stars above, as though searching for something in the heavens, as if the vastness of space spoke a language that no one could understand. But she did, Aurek was sure of it, and somehow, she seemed to speak with him in that silence. On an afternoon bathed in golden sunlight, they ventured out into the wilds beyond the small settlement Aurek had built. He had grown fond of their explorations, knowing that with each step, he was learning more about her world, and perhaps most significantly, himself. They walked in a meadow of tall grasses that swayed in the gentle breeze, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Narai seemed to blend with the environment, her skin absorbing the sunlight, her movements as graceful as the shifting grasses. She was beautiful. There was no denying it, and for the first time since he had met her, Aurek truly understood the weight of his emotions. He had thought that maybe he would have time to process what he was feeling, but as she turned toward him, her gaze warm and expectant, he knew that there was no waiting anymore. His heart had already chosen, and when she caught his eyes and smiled softly, the same fragile smile that had first captivated him, he knew that she had already chosen him too. "How do you say beautiful in your language?" Aurek asked suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper as he took a step closer to her. Her eyes twinkled, a glimmer of humor in them. "You say, Seelan?" she replied, the word dancing from her lips in a way that made his heart flutter. Aurek smiled, and the word Seelan seemed to carry a weight he hadn't anticipated. It felt right to say it, to speak her language with such meaning, such depth. He repeated it softly, then caught her gaze once again. "Seelan, Narai. You are Seelan." She looked away, her cheeks tinged with color, but the faintest, most contented smile lingered on her lips. Aurek's chest tightened at the sight. He had never imagined that such a simple gesture, a word spoken in a different tongue, could convey so much. But with Narai, everything felt amplified. Their connection, unspoken yet undeniable, pulsed between them like an electric current, grounding them in something neither had experienced before. The peace of that moment lingered as they walked further into the meadow. Yet beneath the serenity, Aurek couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. A shadow on the horizon, a storm he wasn't sure how to face. It wasn't until the next day, when they returned to the settlement, that Aurek's fears were confirmed. It had been a long morning. Narai had been learning new human tasks, something Aurek had noticed she excelled at. Her ability to observe and adapt was nothing short of remarkable. It made him wonder what her true potential was, what she might be capable of if given the chance to truly thrive in this new world. He was trying to catch his breath, having just completed some chores around the compound, when he noticed the unfamiliar figure in the distance. It was a small group of individuals, human but not familiar to him. They had arrived on a vessel, their presence stark and unnatural against the backdrop of the wilderness. Aurek's stomach churned with uncertainty. He knew these were not visitors with good intentions. The moment Narai saw them, her posture shifted. She froze, her eyes narrowing in something between caution and fear. Aurek could feel the tension rising in the air as he met her gaze. He saw the subtle tremor in her hands, the way her eye flicked nervously to the strangers. Her discomfort was palpable. Aurek didn't wait to question what was happening. He moved toward her, instinctively placing himself between her and the newcomers. "Stay close to me," he murmured, his voice low. Narai didn't respond at first, but she stepped closer, her presence somehow more fragile than usual. The strangers were approaching their leader. A man in his 50s, dressed in a well-pressed uniform, spoke first. "You are the one who took the alien girl in," he said to Aurek, his tone calculating, as though he was measuring him for some unseen purpose. "She's not an alien girl," Oryx said firmly, his voice rising. "Her name is Narai, and she's not a thing to be used." The leader chuckled softly, but there was no warmth in it. "Used? We simply need to take her back to the council. You know the rules. She's a defect, damaged. Her kind can't remain free." Oryx felt his muscles tighten. The man's words hit him like a slap, cold and cutting. The council. He should have known they wouldn't let her stay for long. They'd seen her as a tool, something to be used for their amusement, for experiments. Narai stiffened behind him, the fear now evident in the sharpness of her breathing. She looked to Oryx, her gaze searching for reassurance that he had no words to provide. Oryx glanced over his shoulder at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eye, but he wasn't about to back down. "She stays with me," Oryx said, his voice steady but resolute. "I will not let you take her." The leader's smile turned into a smirk. "You think you can protect her from the council, human? You cannot defy them." "I can and I will," Oryx shot back. The tension between them could be felt, thick and suffocating. Oryx could see the leader's hands twitch, likely signaling for his companions to move. But Oryx wasn't backing down. Not without a fight. Not after all they had been through together. Narai's hand brushed against his arm, her touch sending an unexpected rush of warmth through him. "Oryx," she said, her voice small. "Don't. It's too dangerous." But Oryx shook his head. "You're worth everything to me, Narai. Don't you see that? I'll protect you no matter what." For the first time, Narai looked at him like she truly saw him, deep, unguarded. "I never thought I could be worth anything." "Well, you are. To me, you're everything." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, it felt as though the world outside had paused, suspended in a perfect stillness. The leader of the group, his expression cold and calculating, took a step forward. The other humans behind him shifted, their eyes narrowing, sizing up Oryx, as if expecting him to falter. But Oryx stood tall, his body rigid with determination. He felt Narai's hand on his arm, and the warmth of her touch steadied his resolve. This wasn't just about saving her from these strangers. This was about standing up for what was right. "I will not let you take her," Oryx repeated, his voice unwavering. The leader's smile faltered, but his eyes burned with contempt. "You are in over your head, human. You think you can defy the council? You're nothing but a pawn in their game. And so is she." Oryx shook his head, the weight of their words barely touching him anymore. "You're wrong. Narai is not a tool. She's not a pawn. She's a person, a soul with a heart and a mind. And I will protect her, no matter who tries to take her." Narai, standing behind him, seemed to draw strength from his words. She stepped forward slightly, her body aligning with Oryx. Her gaze met the leader's, fierce and unyielding. "You have no right to take me," she said quietly but with a strength that was as sharp as any blade. The leader blinked in surprise, clearly not expecting her to speak. His smirk wavered for just a moment before he quickly regained control, turning to the soldiers behind him. "You see?" he spat. "She's broken. She doesn't even know her place. But Oryx wasn't listening to him anymore. He had seen something in Narai's eyes just now, something that lit up like a spark of fire. She wasn't just some defective alien girl. She was a force to be reckoned with. In that moment, everything became clear. Oryx didn't need to fight these people with fists or words. He had something they couldn't take. He had the truth. And Narai had the same strength. "I've seen you mock her," Oryx said, his voice steady. "I've seen you disregard her humanity, her worth. But I will not stand by and watch you do it any longer. If you want to take her, you'll have to go through me." There was silence. The group of strangers stood frozen for a long moment, and Oryx could feel the tension in the air like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Narai's hand tightened around his arm, but this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was out of trust. The leader took a long breath, his eyes narrowing. "So be it," he said at last, his voice cold. "But don't think for a second you're safe. The council will find you." Oryx's eyes never wavered. "Let them come. With that, the leader gave a sharp nod to his men. Without another word, they turned and left, walking away with heavy steps that echoed through the meadow. Oryx stood there for a moment, watching their retreating forms, his heart still pounding in his chest. But as the distance between them grew, he exhaled slowly, the adrenaline subsiding. Narai, still by his side, took a step closer. Her hand gently brushed against his. "You did it," she whispered. Oryx looked at her, seeing the quiet admiration in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." Narai smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her in a long time. It was soft, filled with warmth and gratitude. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with something new, a spark of hope. Oryx's heart skipped a beat. He could feel it now. Everything he had fought for, everything he had been protecting, was standing before him, in the form of this beautiful alien girl who had once believed she wasn't worth anything. But she was worth everything. To him, she was worth more than he could ever express. And he didn't have to say the words aloud. His heart spoke them, loud and clear, in a language that no one could misunderstand. He reached for her, his hand gentle as he cupped her cheek. "Narai, you're everything to me. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, they simply stood there, eyes locked, the world around them fading into the background. She didn't say anything, but the way her gaze softened told him everything he needed to know. She understood. She felt it too. And in that instant, everything shifted. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubts, they all melted away. There was no longer a question about whether she was worth saving. Narai was worth more than the world itself. She stepped closer, her hands resting on his chest, and for the first time, she leaned into him, her body warm against his. "I thought I was broken," she whispered. "But maybe we're both a little broken, and maybe that's okay." Oryx gently tilted her chin up, his lips brushing against hers in a soft, tentative kiss. It was everything he had dreamed of, tender, unhurried, as if the world was giving them this moment, just for them. When they pulled away, he smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Maybe we are," he said, his voice full of affection. "But we'll heal together." Narai smiled up at him, the light of the setting sun glinting off her skin like stardust. "Together," she echoed, her voice a soft promise. They stood there for a long time, in the silence of the meadow, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The future, once uncertain, now seemed full of infinite possibilities. No matter what came next, they knew they would face it together. And in that moment, Oryx knew that their love, this bond they had built, was not just a victory over the people who sought to tear them apart. It was a victory of something much more powerful. The belief that love, in all its forms, was stronger than any force in the universe.